Hi, I'm Shannon from houseimprovements.com, and in today's video I want to show you a little bit about pneumatic air nailers or brad nailers. So these ones specifically shoot 18 gauge nails. So that is typically what you would see for a lot of finish, trim work and that sort of thing would be an 18 gauge nail. So these are all pneumatic, so you're going to need an air compressor of some kind to run them. Most brad nailers are recommended to be used around 90 pounds, 90 to say 120 pounds of air pressure. So you might have a small air compressor like this, portable guy, or whatever kind of air compressor you have, and it'll have a regulator on here where you can adjust with this knob the actual output pressure. Okay, when I demo these, I'm just going to be using the shop hose. So with 18 gauge brad nailers, I guess I should mention, you can get pin nailers, which is just a really fine little nail. You can get 15 gauge, 16 gauge. Those are heavier, bigger nails, like in diameter wise, than the 18. So the bigger the number, the smaller gauge of nail. And brad nails will typically come in a little, well, this will just be a chunk of it, but they'll be, you know, I don't know what you call it, a group of nails all stuck together. They'll go in the nailer. Well, here's a bitter. So that's your nails right there. And they come in different lengths. Most brad nailers, well, all brad nailers will tell you what length of nails they will shoot. A lot of them you'll find are going to be about 3/4 of an inch long to 2 inches long usually for 18 gauge nails. But that will be right on the packaging or whatever. This little old nailer here, I think it shoots maximum of an inch long 18 gauge nail. A lot of the newer ones now, they'll go generally as far as 2 inches. With your nailers, I've got 4 different types here. These are all nailers that I use in the shop or on site. Some have more features than others. On this one, let's just start with the real basic. So this is, I don't even know how old this is. Really basic, magazine opens up. The nails sit down in here. So they sit right down on the bottom. Slide it forward and close that. Okay, that holds your nails in. This really has no other adjustments on it other than there's a safety here that prevents you from being able to squeeze the trigger all the way. Other than that, this one just has a trigger. To change, if it gets a jam in here, like a nail gets bent up or jammed up inside, this one you need a special wrench, an Allen wrench, to loosen these 2 studs off, and then the front nose piece comes off to get at that jam. A nailer like this has a little easier, quick adjustment. So this little front piece just holds on with a clamp and it opens up so that you can get at any jams. This is a lot quicker and easier than trying to find that wrench that you've tucked away somewhere and forgotten where you put it, or trying to find the right size one. Okay, so I would try to find one with a nose on it that is a quick release like this, because even today there's a lot of them made that aren't like that. Like this one isn't that old and it doesn't have a quick release like that. Just about all the nailers now, I think all of them in fact now, have the safety feature on them, which this one didn't have. So with all the new ones now, unless this little extra piece like is on these ones, there's that one, this one, and this one, that has to be depressed to allow the trigger to actually fire. If that isn't pushed in against the work you're working on, it won't fire. Okay, so that's a safety feature they've come out with in the last few years. All of these ones have magazines for the nails where you can't see through it, so you can't see how many nails are left, but most of them will have a little gauge or a little wee window like this one has, so you can tell if there's still nails down that end. So this one has a gauge that turns yellow when you're using up the last 5 or 6 nails. This one and this one just have a little wee opening so you can see if there's nails there or not. So, and this one, again, this one really has nothing. You pretty much got to open it up to see. A lot of the magazines are all the same. They just have some kind of button on them to open and close to put your nails in. Oh, that one had a nail laying in there odd. Okay, oh, this one I guess does turn yellow. I forgot when there's no nails in it. Or orange, I guess. That little window covers in. Other features you're going to find. This one has a swivel tailpiece for the hose, which can be kind of nice, but I don't think it's a must. So when your hose is on here, it just allows this to move a little bit easier, you know, if it's up against your arm or something, as compared to this one that's rigid and it doesn't do anything. This one, even though it doesn't have the quick release nose, it does have an onboard storage for the wrench that works all of that stuff, so that is kind of nice. At least you should have the wrench with you then. Some of them will have adjustment back here for adjusting the depth that the nail is driven in past the surface of the work material. So a lot of them will have that now. That one does. This one's a little different. It's a little slide mechanism that you can adjust. And this one's a wheel just like that first one too, back there. This one has a feature, and so does that one, for, they call it bump nailing. Honestly, I don't know when you would do that using a brad nailer, but by flipping this switch or adjustment on there, you can either shoot one nail at a time, or you could hold the trigger, and every time this safety is depressed, it would fire a nail. I personally wouldn't do that with a brad nailer. Usually you're trying to finally position where your nail's going, so it's just as easy to pull the trigger every time. Those are all the main features of them. And like I said, they all have this safety mechanism, which some are a little handier than others. This one I find, because it's a little further behind the nose where the nail comes out, if you're right on the edge of something, you got to have it held just the right way. This one, it's still behind the nail position, but it's kind of a U-shaped nose, so you know you can catch on the edge. You know, if I'm shooting here and I'm trying to get real close to the edge, I can still catch on something without having to have the heel right on it or switch around to this side so that it's on. So that's something to look at. Most of them will have a rubber protective piece on there, so you're not leaving a mark behind every time it touches whatever you're nailing. Okay. Most of them will require a little bit of oil every day if you're using it a lot, or every 500 nails or so. So just some air tool oil, just a drop or two down there, and then plug it into the air hose, and that'll put it in. It just lubricates all the rings and everything that are in the plunger mechanism and the piston. So that pretty much identifies all that. I'm just going to show you a couple more little things. Let's get those ones out of the way. Something else to look at is all these nails when you buy them, and you're not going to be able to zoom in close enough, but the shaft of the nail goes down, and then they're chiseled into a point on these sticks of nails. So when the plunger comes down and knocks this one nail off the end and it goes in, if it's going to curve one way or the other, because of the direction of the point, if the front of your nailer's like this, because that's the way the nail's coming out, this nail is either going to curve that way or that way, if it curves at all. So when you're nailing onto something on the edge like this, if I'm nailing that piece of trim on there, what I typically have gotten in the habit of is keeping my nailer perpendicular to the long narrow piece that I'm nailing into. So if that nail goes in and wants to curve one way or the other, it's actually still going into wood. If I nail it in this direction, like this, and it decides it's going to go in and curve and it's long enough, it could come out the side on this edge or whichever edge. But by turning it this way, it can still curve, but at least it's staying in the wood. It's not going to poke your fingers or anything, or just wreck your project. So that's something to always consider. Part of that is using the right length nail for the job you're using too. It doesn't need to be a 2-inch nail to nail on, 1/4-inch trim. So, usually if I'm doing 1/4-inch trim or something like that, I'd use about a 1-inch or 1.25-inch nail at the longest. But it's just something to think about. Another thing to think about is if you did have to hold your nail this direction for whatever reason, don't have your finger or your hand or anything right close in that vicinity, because if it does come through, and I've done it, believe me, I've done it a few times, that nail is going to poke you right in the finger, and there's no getting your hand out of the way quick enough. It's going to poke your finger before your hand reacts or you feel the pain. So, okay, so that's basics on the air brad nailer. Whenever you're doing anything with the nails, you don't want to have it plugged into the air, obviously, just like unplugging the cord sort of thing. So you're going to put your nails in, close the chamber, put that in, make sure your safety glasses are on, and line up whatever you're nailing. You could be doing baseboards or whatever, or this piece of trim on there. You're going to, you notice my finger's off the trigger just like a gun. I'm going to depress that foot on there, then I'm going to reach down and squeeze the trigger. Okay, and then just repeat. Okay, so they work quite easily. One that I don't have on display here, I guess because it isn't actually pneumatic, is I do have one that's powered by gas, and there's lots of them now that are battery powered. So, you know, if you don't have access to air or just don't want to drag around an air compressor and a hose, those are options as well for brad nailers. So again, if you need to use a brad nailer, you know, you can buy one for $100 usually. You can get them even cheaper than that, but they probably aren't going to last. So spend $100, you're going to have it for a good part of your life if you aren't doing this professionally, and all your friends will want to borrow it too. Okay, so hopefully that was informative for you, and if it was, please click the thumbs up like I always ask. You can check out our forum page if you have any comments or questions about these types of nailers or any project you're working on. And as always, you can also check out the link to our Patreon page below. Thanks a lot for watching.